What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today I'm giving you really six potential trade packages for Julio Jones. Hope you all are having a fantastic day. I originally had a different video planned to come out today, but my guy goes on undisputed. Maybe he didn't know that Shannon Sharpe was on live television when he announces that he requested a trade. So I was already planning on doing this video because the trade's not going to happen until after June 1st, but given that it's been buzzing today, I figured I'd go ahead and make it happen today. Then we'll do the Aaron Rodgers one closer to that June 1st mark, and if Rodgers even gets traded, but that's kind of the fun seventh one I threw in here. So with all that aside, I hope you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel, want more sports content in your life, like what you see, please consider hitting that subscribe button and comment away down in the comment section. Where is Julio Jones going for? What do you think the package is? How much value do you think he holds? That is the toughest part about both a Julio Jones package, maybe an Aaron Rodgers one. It could be tricky there, but maybe even Stephon Gilmore, who I thought about putting in one of the packages here. We'll talk about that later on, but give me your destination and the package that you predict to be dealt and the move to be made to move Julio Jones. All right, let's go ahead and jump into it. And these aren't necessarily in an order, though in my opinion, this is maybe the order I would like to see this happen in. Number one's got to be the Indianapolis Colts. Just in the sense that you look at their cap number, almost $20.5 million. So they have the money to take on Julio Jones' $15.3 million cap hit. That's obviously huge. It's a big part of this. So just right now, they can take on that cap money and then have some left over to sign their rookies. Then also, it rolls over. So that's nice. But they are a stingy team when it comes to how they use their money, and maybe they're not trying to pay Julio Jones, which would be just dumbfounding to me because, yeah, I like Michael Pittman, but I think he's a high-end two. And right now, he's their number one. Yeah, and Julio, it's that trickle-down effect, where Michael Pittman then becomes a really nice two, and T.Y. Hilton's your slot guy, and then Paris Campbell, you mix him in as a deep threat, open up the intermediate and the underneath work. I mean, that's a really nice wide receiver core. You've taken care of the offensive line. You're putting Carson Wentz in a spot where he can actually succeed. Without Julio, you're kind of straining that, wide receiver room a little bit. But in this trade package, the Falcons, and you'll see this a lot, I'm trying to find young players who have some room to grow, and typically secondary and pass rushers. That's where Atlanta needs to get better, especially on the defensive side of the football. So Rock Ya-Sin, third-year corner, I think he still has room to improve. Drafted from the FCS level, we knew there was going to be a steep curve there, and I think in third year he can make a jump into being at least a plus-level player. And then Ben Logano, he hasn't been really a success project the Colts are proud of, but hey, maybe in a new system working with Dean Pease, maybe he can make it work. He's another young player, so maybe that's something they like. And then a 2022 third-round pick. The Colts can already absorb the money, but then you throw in, obviously, the pick, which right now that's kind of interesting. Like, the Falcons are looking for a one, but a lot of people don't think they can get it, which doesn't make sense when you consider we're talking about Julio Jones. But in this trade scenario, the Falcons get a couple of young players at positions of need and a mid-round asset, which a second-round pick might end up being the max trade value you can get. So I think it makes sense for both sides in a lot of ways. We'll move on to package number two, the New England Patriots. And this is one that's been talked about a lot. Their cap number is just under $16 million. So as of right now, they can absorb the Julio Jones contract. And I mentioned I've had a hard time finding value for Stephon Gilmore. Thought about putting Gilmore in this package, but his cap number, 16.2. Gilmore has a higher cap hit than Julio Jones. And now I make an exception with somebody later that makes this work, but that player is also younger and is a position just swap for Julio Jones. Gilmore's older. I don't know if Atlanta's going to want to extend him for 2 years. If they do, then yeah, you take on Stephon Gilmore and you might even get a second-round pick. You probably have to give up a second-round pick, I should say. But you get Gilmore for Julio Jones. You swap vets, high-level players when they're playing at their best, and you extend Gilmore, add 2 more years onto his cap number or contract this year. And you lessen the cap hit this year. But I decided to go J.C. Jackson and a third-round pick. The reason I did Jackson was, obviously the Pats put a second-round tender on him. It felt like the Pats were kind of playing a game of chicken with the league, saying, go, take him. Pay him whatever you want. We'd rather have a second-round pick than him on a huge contract, which to me sounds like he's not going to be somebody who's coming back to New England next year. So as a very small cap number, $3.38 million playing on the tender. So the Falcons obviously can absorb that hit, and the Patriots get at number 1, clear-cut wide receiver who's an upgrade over Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers, N'Keal Harry, who's been a disappointment. Julio Jones leaps and bounds above all of them. And then I think he's actually a really nice complement with Aguilar, two different but really good field stretchers at this point in their careers, despite, they're not necessarily young. But nonetheless, it helps out the Patriots. You get a clear-cut number 1 for Mac Jones, who I presume is going to be the starter, but even if it's not him, Cam Newton, he could use the weapon all the more. I'm pretty sure even Julio said he wants to play with Cam, so hey, maybe it helps out Cam. And then the Falcons get J.C. Jackson, who a younger option at corner, but whether it's him or Gilmore, they can extend either one and then potentially have a lockdown corner. I liked what we saw from A.J. Terrell last year, but they still need a second corner. Really, they need a number 1, and you make Terrell that high-end number 2 corner. Moving on to package number 3, the Las Vegas Raiders, and this might have been the toughest one to put together because name value, you look at Clelin Ferrell, and you're like, that's top 5 pick. Whoa, what's going on here? And then Jonathan Abram, another first rounder. But Clelin Ferrell was seen as a first round talent, but not as a top 5 guy, at least not once we got around to the draft. Pre-draft process, sure. Once we got to draft time, he was like a mid to late first round. Typically that's how people saw him. Jonathan Abram was probably a day 2 guy the Raiders reached for and took him. So with that, it depends on how you look at this trade. Are we basing this off what the Raiders see these players as or what the league does? To me, Ferrell, Abrams, and a third rounder, I think that's pretty decent for the Raiders to give up. And then if you're Atlanta, kind of like what we talked about with the Colts, you get a couple of players who, even Abrams has had moments where he's just, laid the boom. He's just not been good in coverage. So he could be an in-the-box type of safety, playing near the line of scrimmage. Maybe even use him in blitzing. I mean, like Dean Pease gets creative. They scheme up pressure, and Abrams could help out in that area. And then Clelin Ferrell, he has gotten better as the years have gone on. I mean, he's going into his 3rd season, but he's gotten better over time. I think there's still room for him to grow, and it's a potential boost to the edge rushing core there in Atlanta. Plus, you get an asset, and then for the Raiders, you get Julio Jones, who plug and play, number 1 wide receiver. Nice, kind of like what I said with the Patriots. Nice compliment with a speedy guy on the other side and Henry Ruggs. Next thing you know, that offense starts to look like it can keep up and compete with the likes of the Chargers, the Chiefs, maybe the Broncos if they get Aaron Rodgers, and that's certainly on the table. So this offense is going to need some firepower. And right now, Henry Ruggs is a big play guy, but they didn't really use him in that role last year. And then it's not a lot of other options, at least not a lot of other proven options. Julio is proven. We know he's good, and if he's on the field, clear-cut improvement there in that wide receiver room. On to the Dallas Cowboys, my trade package number 4 for Julio Jones. This one's pretty straightforward. You swap Michael Gallup for Julio Jones, and then you throw in a second-round pick. This one's a second-rounder. Up until this, it's been thirds included. Part of that is because there's been players involved. Also, the Falcons said if it's going to be an NFC team, they're going to ask for a little bit more, or they will do a trade with the NFC team if the price is right, which to me just says it's going to be a higher price. So because of that, Cowboys have to give up a little bit more in draft value. And then for Atlanta, I mean, you're going to get rid of an aging wide receiver who has had a hard time staying on the field and clearly doesn't want to be there. He requested a trade. You get Michael Gallup, who's a really solid young player, and you're not asking him to be wide receiver number 1. You have Calvin Ridley. You have Kyle Pitts. That's another part of all this is like whatever wide receiver you might get back, really this and then the next package, the only ones where I have the Falcons getting a wide receiver in return. You don't need them to be, world breakers. You don't need them to be Julio Jones. You just need them to be good. You just need them to be starters, So Michael Gallup can certainly be that. Plus, you get the second-round pick. And then for Dallas, dude, I mean, at that point, I cannot wait for when they play Washington. Washington might have the best defense in football. And then you put Julio on that Cowboys offense with Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, when healthy, a really good offensive line. And not great tight end options. Blake Jarwin's fine, I suppose, but Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and then Julio Jones. Come on, minimum. This team sells tickets. I mean, they're gonna get flexed into primetime games with that offense, and not that Dallas ever has a problem selling tickets, but or getting media buzz, but they're gonna have plenty of it if they were to be able to make this move. And it's an upgrade. Don't be afraid to get better. You give up a second-round pick, but Julio Jones is better than Michael Gallup. Go ahead and make the move. On to package number 5, it's the LA Chargers, another team that, given their cap situation, just about $20.5 million, they can withstand the Julio Jones cap hit. Still have to pay some of their rookies. But really, if you're a take on Julio Jones, you have to move on from Mike Williams because you just drafted Josh Palmer. You already have Keenan Allen. They had players they drafted from a year ago. At that point, it's too crowded of a room, and that's where it gets tough. So because on the 5th-year option, Mike Williams' cap hit is actually slightly more than Julio Jones, which is just amazing. So if this trade were to happen, the Falcons would have to extend Mike Williams and spread out that cap hit into other years. And I think they'd be willing to do that. The reason I was hesitant to do that with Gilmore is because he's on the wrong side of 30. Mike Williams, you don't have that problem. And he's somebody who was a top 10 pick in the draft. You feel like there's still some upside. And I like him opposite of Calvin Ridley. He could be the big body, 50-50 catch guy for the burner and route running technician that Calvin Ridley is. I feel like they have differing skill sets that complement one another really well. So you extend Mike Williams, then you can make this work, and then the Chargers throw in a 2nd-round pick as well. Definitely an interesting fit, and then you look at it from LA's perspective. Kind of the same thing we talked about the Raiders, but more so with the Chargers, because then you're on a level playing field with the Chiefs in my mind. Like Keenan Allen and Julio Jones. You wish you still had Hunter Henry, but Jared Cook's fine. Austin Eckler might be the best pass-catching running back in the league. If he's not number 1, he's certainly top 5. Vastly improved offensive line, and then a quarterback who, as long as he can avoid that 2nd-year slump, which is easier said than done, they have the offense to go toe-to-toe with the Chiefs, and they'll play them twice this year, which will be awesome. And then it comes down to defense, and Brandon Staley is a defensive guru, so you feel confident with the Chargers' ability to be able to compete with the Chiefs if they were to make a move like this. And then, like I said, for Atlanta, you get a good young replacement. You have to extend them, but then you keep that offense at a high level, and you get a 2nd-round pick for a guy who doesn't want to be there. Makes sense to me. On to the 6th, and this one was kind of the toughest one to do. The Tennessee Titans. Thought about doing Christian Fulton at first, but as I looked at our lads, they moved Elijah Molden to strong safety, and I think that ultimately makes a lot of sense. Molden can be somebody who plays around the line of scrimmage and do it at a high level. So I like Molden in that role, and then that makes you have to keep Christian Fulton be that nickel corner, which I think he will be a very good slot corner. But if they play Molden more of that nickel role, I think Fulton's expendable, and I think he's somebody the Falcons would definitely be interested in bringing in. But given that the Titans might need Fulton, I decided to make the package for Sean Evans, Kevin Johnson, this journeyman's corner, former 1st-round pick. No one's been able to have him hit his potential, but if he can just be league average opposite of AJ Terrell, it might be an improvement over Sheffield, which, no disrespect to the man, but he's just not good. And Isaiah Oliver's better play at the back half of last year was playing in the nickel. So if you bring on Johnson, you at least have somebody who could, no guarantee with this, but could be a league average outside corner opposite of AJ Terrell. Plus, you get a 2nd-round pick. Obviously, we love the draft capital, especially on this channel. The draft is a big deal. A lot of you came to my channel because of my draft coverage. And then for the Tennessee Titans, I've been saying it, obviously they're a QB injury away from being in despair. That's going to be a tough spot. But also, this team's a Derrick Henry injury away from, being not the best team in the division, simply put. And then even more so, they're an A.J. Brown injury away from having nobody on the outside. And this is a team that runs a lot of 2 wide receiver sets, so you might be saying, oh, Josh Reynolds is fine. You force feed A.J. Brown, and then, Josh Reynolds is okay. But I see it as if A.J. Brown gets hurt, who else is producing? So if you bring in Julio Jones, that alleviates that problem for me. And even if then, you had a freak Derrick Henry injury, I could then say, hey, well, they got 2 stud wide receivers. Make it work on the running game. Some of it's the scheme. Some of it's a great offensive line. You can make do, especially if you can continue to pass the ball at an efficient level with Tannehill, Julio, and A.J. Brown. That kind of lightens that loss. It'd be a big loss, but it would be softened a little bit if you added Julio Jones. Don't know about this package when it comes to the players. I don't know if the Falcons would want another inside linebacker, though Evans is a pretty good blitzer, and that might help with Dean Pease and what he wants to do, trying to scheme up pressure. And then Kevin Johnson, maybe he's an okay corner opposite of A.J. Terrell on the outside. And then, of course, like I said, you love the 2nd-round pick. Now we're going to get to this 7th trade package, and I have to just start with this with a disclaimer. This package is probably not enough, and it's vague. I just have picks kind of just put in there, especially for Green Bay from Denver, and just like a general 2nd-round pick going to Atlanta. Not entirely sure this is how this trade would look, but think about this. This is something that I've been kind of pontificating about and wishing I could see, just given that, every video and every package and every article you read about, Julio Jones being traded, Aaron Rodgers being traded. It's like post June 1st. That's when the day is going to be made. And I even started this video by saying I was going to do this and the Aaron Rodgers video closer to June 1st, but I decided to just go ahead and do it now for Julio. But what if post June 1 we worked out this trade where Aaron Rodgers goes to Denver and the Packers get a bunch of picks from the Broncos? Call it, I just put picks on there, but let's just say 3 ones. That's kind of the draft capital asset that I've been seeing out there. Maybe 2 1s and a 2. Okay, that goes to Denver the other way. You look at Denver and, you give up a lot of draft assets, but there's been, trades going out there where you give up a bunch of draft assets and Cortland Sutton or, Patrick Surtain or whoever. In this trade scenario, you're keeping those star level players in your room and on the roster, but you still get Aaron Rodgers. So then you're Green Bay. Now you're starting Jordan Love. You got a bunch of assets. That's great. That's awesome. But now you have the affordability and the cap room to take on Julio Jones' contract. And what better way to help Jordan Love than bring in Julio Jones and create maybe the most talented wide receiver duo of all time? Davante Adams and Julio Jones. I mean, what team is stopping that? Then you throw in Amari Rodgers in the slot. You can play Allen Lazard there. MVS is still in and around the area. Robert Tonyan was a productive touchdown scoring tight end. I mean, if you want to put Jordan Love in a position to succeed, having Davante Adams and Julio Jones in your wide receiver room will certainly help. And Aaron Jones. Don't forget about him, not only as a runner, but also as a pass catcher. And then for Atlanta, you're probably getting picks coming from Green Bay. Maybe they get some of the assets from Denver. Maybe it's just like a trickle down. Denver just spreads the picks throughout the teams involved. But then also Michael Ojemudia, who was a sound, very, decent corner last year as a rookie, which one of the few rookie corners that wasn't a dumpster fire in year 1, which that's good. And he's a 3rd round player, and I think he's played above where he was taken. And then Malik Reed, who in moments as an edge rusher has shown some progress and shown that he could potentially one day be an every down guy. And some people have waited a few years and thought that maybe he could be the Von Miller replacement. But in this case, the Falcons get an outside corner, a very good one in my opinion, or at least a very solid one in Michael Ojemudia. Malik Reed, who can help be a productive pass rusher for a team that desperately needs it. And then I just threw in a 2nd round pick in general, call it a 2022 second, maybe even a 1st, but probably more that 2nd. Maybe it's down to a 3rd, but corner, edge, draft pick, check for Atlanta. For Green Bay, a bunch of picks from Denver and Julio Jones to try to help Jordan Love. Check. And then for Denver, you give up a bunch of draft assets, maybe even, and then a couple of players too, a bunch of draft assets, but corner 4 or 5, and then backup edge rusher, which you already drafted one in Baron Browning. So expendable edge rusher, expendable corner, and a bunch of assets to get the 2nd or 3rd best quarterback in the NFL. Check. I don't know. Like I said, that trade detail in that package might be off, and probably is off, but it's more, think of it as a thought experiment. What if both these players we've been talking about are going to be traded, or with Rodgers it's more speculative, could be traded after June 1st? What if they were done in the same deal? What would that look like? And how awesome would that be to cover? And how fun would that be for NFL and its news and just the fan base for every team? Like, that would be so fun to witness as a football fan. But regardless, that's going to do it. I've given you 7 Julio Jones trade packages that could potentially come away when the Falcons decide to make the move. Tell me what you thought down in the comment section. Tell me where you think Julio Jones goes, what the package is. Then also tell me how far off I am on mine. I'm not a former GM. I'm not an expert, so I'd love to have your feedback. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel and want more sports content like this in your life, hit that subscribe button. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.
I'm part of the last generation that remembers time like God. She's